Take two, what's going on, guys? It is 5:47 in the morning. Hope everybody's doing well. Check out my flashy attire. I'm dressed up for no reason whatsoever. Drinking my zero sugar, zero sugar Monster with, of course, some coffee. I don't know. This is my second take of the video. It turned out to be way longer than I wanted it to be, so I'm gonna try to cut out some of the stuff that I didn't need to in the first place. So, how did I excel in college, and what are my tips for people that are looking to go to college? So this is for some of you guys, this is for some of the new viewers, anybody who's looking at going to college, who's in college, some tips, especially study tips. Those are gonna be coming a little bit later on in the video, but I'm gonna get right into it. The first thing that you need to do is establish balance. So this is with academia, so homework, projects, class time, you're studying, you need to develop your study habits. You need to also balance that with your social life. So you need to make time for friends. You need to make time for if you want to go out to eat, if you want to go out to the bar, if you want to go party, do whatever you got to do. You got to make time for extracurriculars. So this is, for me, this was like the gym, any hobbies that you have, clubs, which I highly recommend. I don't think enough people get involved in clubs, and that's something not only that looks really good on your resume, but it helps build leadership skills. Story time with Jordan, I'm gonna tell you, because this was really beneficial. I was in a leadership role for the nutrition and dietetics club, so I had to do a whole bunch of things. It was a little bit tough to balance at some points in time, but it was great. I loved it. And there was this time, it was my first semester away at college when I was reckless, and it was me and a couple other students in the program. We had a very prestigious dietetics program in my school, so people came from all over the place to come visit. And I had to give a tour, and we had to do presentations and talk about the program with people. And it was on a Saturday morning at like 8 a.m. And I went out the night before and got completely trashed. And I ended up bringing this girl home, which kept me up till like 5 in the morning. It was like ridiculous. And so I slept for like an hour and a half, 2 hours, woke up, and I was like, shit, I gotta give a presentation. I was still hungover, still kind of drunk. So I kicked her out, went, showered, brushed my teeth, did all that, and I put on the same clothes that I wore to go out, the Mr. Slay outfit. That's what my buddy calls me instead of Mr. Day, Mr. Slay. And so I put on the same clothes because they were nice clothes. They didn't look dirty. So I was like, cool. So I went to the event, had no idea that I reeked like tequila. Apparently I had dumped some type of alcohol all over myself. I love Long Island iced teas, so that's probably what it was. And I just reeked like alcohol, and I had no idea. And I was getting weird looks from some of the professors that were there. And this was my first time meeting the director of the program, so very high up, important person, intelligent, well-established. And this was my first time meeting her, and it was not a good first impression. And I had to talk to prospective students, tell them about the program and things. Meanwhile, I'm kind of like not there. And they came with their parents, so they were asking me like these in-depth questions, and I was just like, oh dude, I don't know, like I was useless. And it was just, so the bottom line is just keep these things in mind if you're going to be doing clubs, or just you need to work on your balance and make sure that you can balance everything that you have on your plate. Makes for a great story looking back, but in the moment it was quite embarrassing, and I don't know, just keep that in mind. So secondly, I would say make sure to balance your workload. So this is where an advisor comes in. They're gonna help you out with this stuff, but you wanna make sure that you don't take too much, like too large of a course load, and you wanna make sure to evenly distribute it out. So like first semester, my advisor told me to take 15, 16 credits because I'm just getting acclimated to the environment and stuff like that, being away at school. And this was a very smart decision. One of the smartest undergrad decisions that I made was just taking a lighter course load at first and getting to class, like walking to class, and balancing extracurriculars and studying and stuff like that, and being in the program, because it is a very intensive program. So there's that. And then the next semester I think I took like 17 credits, and the next semester, so my senior year, I took 18, and then my final semester I took 19. So you can only take 18 credits. I don't know if that's institution wise or state wise, or if that's across the US, but you can only take 18. So I had to get signed off. Like you got to get signatures from, I believe, the director and a bunch of other people to take extra credits. So I did that, but the key is to balance your difficult courses with some fluff courses. So like liberal arts courses, or like gen ed courses that you got to take that are generally lower in work. So like that's what I did in my senior semester. I took genetics, which was the hardest course I've ever taken. The science courses with the labs usually they're the highest credit courses. So it was like 4.5 credits, and standard courses are like 3. So it's a lot more work. And then you got the 3-hour labs on top of that. So I would take that, and I had cell bio, and I had my research. And then those were like my main courses, and I fluffed that up with, there's like contemporary issues with food or environmental sustainability for my senior seminar, which was really easy. And then I took an evolutionary psychology course, which was a little bit difficult, but it went hand in hand with genetics, so it was pretty simple. And technical and professional writing, which was a cakewalk. So you want to take easier courses with your difficult courses, because it's going to, first off, lessen your workload. It's going to boost your GPA by taking those easier courses. And it's just going to make it overall easier, and you're going to make sure that you have all the requirements to graduate on time. So the last thing you want is to get to your senior semester and be like, oh shit, like I still got to take 4 credits and I should be graduating. So now you got to stay an extra semester or take courses over the summer, which sucks. And you got to pay for it out of pocket, which I've had to do. I took a course over the winter because I had to graduate on time. And for some reason, I didn't have a history credit that I thought I had. But it was easy, but the point is you don't want to be spending extra money and wasting time on something that could have easily been avoided. So talk with your advisor, talk with your advisors, meet with multiple. I didn't even use my main advisor when I was going over this stuff because she was horrible. She gave me a terrible outline. So I went to the director, who was actually the same director that I talked about with that story, the drunken story, or the hungover story. It was her, and we actually established a great relationship, and she helped me out with so many things, and I can't thank her enough. So definitely want to take advantage of those relationships that you can build and utilize every resource possible. You can never have too many opinions, and especially if it's a teacher that you have for some courses, which usually it is. Not always, but usually they kind of know your work ethic, kind of know you better, and they get to know you on a personal level. And it makes everything a lot easier. And as long as you're genuine, they're more than happy to help you. So the main topic of this video is going to be the grit of studying, because some people don't know how to study. My method, I'm going to admit, is not the most efficient or effective, but I shouldn't say it's not as effective. It's not as efficient, but it's the most effective, at least for me. So first of all, you got to realize what way works best for you. How do you learn? So men typically tend to be hands-on learners, sometimes more visual. Women are usually more auditory or visual as well. Kind of depends. Again, it varies, but you got to figure out what works best for you. So the key, no matter what, is repetition. So we retain 7 to 10% of what we listen to, or what we see, what we hear, or what we write. So that's why they say 10 to 15 times in order to memorize something. And it can't just be like over and over and over, right, sitting down. It's got to be over a specific amount of time. So you want to repeat these things. So if you're studying for an exam, that's the main thing, is I'm talking about mainly with exams. You want to space it out depending on the time of the exam. So usually I start studying for an exam 7 to 10 days beforehand. It's usually when I start, and I ramp it up the closer I get to the exam. Usually I don't recommend this unless you're on shitloads of caffeine or Adderall or something. I usually pull an all-nighter the night before an exam and study right up to the exam. I'll like take a nap from like 7 p.m. to like, I don't know, 10 or 11, and then I just study straight through. Maybe that's what I do, or I just go right through the night without taking a nap. Kind of depends how I feel, but I don't recommend that. So I do overkill when I study. So first thing I do, of course, you want to go to class. You want to take notes based on what the professor's saying. And I always take notes no matter what, whether you have a printout of the PowerPoint or not. I always take notes of whatever comes up on the screen or whatever they say. Usually whatever they say, I put in the sides of, like, for example, I have a blank piece of paper here. I'll take the actual notes here, and then anything they say, I'll try to write here or like here, just around. Maybe I'll write it in like pencil instead of pen, like the normal notes. Just try to write down as much as you can, any key points they make, because you never know what's going to be on an exam. I have professors that I've had before, and they don't even put up PowerPoints, and you just have to listen to them and write as fast as you can. You could try to record the lectures, but even still, it's not very efficient. Sometimes you don't get good audio on it. So it depends on how the professor teaches and their methods of composing their exams. But that's what you want to do. Jot down what they say, keep in mind your timeline. Keep in mind that you do have other courses that you got to pay attention to. And again, this is where it comes in, prioritizing which courses are more important. So for me, genetics and cell bio during that semester I talked about, those are most important. So I'm going to put most of my energy and study time into those courses versus the ones that are less important. So keep that in mind. The exam dates are going to fall relatively within 1 or 2 weeks of each other, no matter what the courses are. That's just how it is, because all the courses start typically around the same time. So exams, usually they have 4 or 5 exams in a semester. So I love exams, and that's why I put so much effort into them, is because usually they're the highest percentage, and I do really well on them because of this study method that I do. So I love the courses where almost like a large majority of the grade is based on exam grades, because I just dominate those courses and I know I'm going to do really well because it's just memorization. And I don't have a photographic memory, but the way that I do it tends to, I guess, almost create a photographic memory because it's just repetition. So take those notes. Then the next thing I do is I get the book. Usually I do an ebook or a PDF version of the book, and I outline it. So you don't outline every single thing. Anything in bold you want to, any key points you want to outline it by chapter and by topic, and just outline. Usually this takes a few hours, of course, but it's going to be well worth it. And then anytime that you find things that you think would be important, if they disclose what might be on the test, you want to make a flashcard of that. So whether it's definitions, so you put the definition of the word in a question format on the front, and then on the back you put that. And anything that's very close, like definitions that are close or the opposite, you definitely want to make flashcards of that, so that way you can really memorize the information. I like to do that, or like fill in the blanks. I like to do those too, or true or falses, or A, B, C, or D. I like to do those. There's tons of different ways to make flashcards. There's millions of YouTube videos, or if you guys want me to make a YouTube video about it, I'd be more than happy to. So you want to do that, make an outline of the book, and that's going to be a separate stack of papers. So it's probably going to be pretty lengthy. The textbook is going to have a lot more material than you went over in class, but you never know what the professor is going to put on the exam. I've had professors that they say you want to read the textbook, and then they'll put questions that they didn't talk about in the lecture, and they'll put those on the exam because they're in the textbook. So it could be just random facts. It could be figures that are important to whatever the disciplinary study is that you're taking the exam for. You just never know. So I'd rather be safe than sorry and try to memorize whatever I can, because exams play a big part in basically every single course. So you have that stack. That's going to be over here. Then you go to your actual lecture notes and PowerPoints and stuff, and you want to outline that based on key points. So again, you're going to do the same thing you did with the textbook. Do that with your class notes. So now you have 2 separate stacks of paper. Again, you're going to want to do this over the course of a few days. You're not going to want to do this all at once unless you're super motivated, you're not tired, you're stimmed the fuck out, whatever, totally up to you. But that's the way I usually do it. I do it over the course of like 1 or 2 days maybe. And I usually sit down for hours and hours at a time when I do this. I love whiteboards too. Those come in big handy, especially when drawing or trying to like make flow charts and stuff. So do that, and then finally what you do is you combine them. So you combine based on the chapter or topic that's discussed. You combine the textbook, and then you combine your actual notes from class, like lecture notes, and you combine them. So now each section is going to be a little bit lengthier, but you're going to combine them into one. And so that's going to be your master summary per se, or master review. So there's that. Again, you're going to want to make flashcards throughout, whether it's your lecture or whether it's your textbook. And usually I'll have like a stack like this of, it's probably about that big for each exam, which is a lot, but you memorize the material. And as you go through and you study them, you could kind of set to one side the ones that you have problems with, and the ones that you have no problem with or you memorize right away. You can kind of just stop studying those or look over them like once every other day or so. No point overdoing it. Overdoing it any more than you already are. So then the most critical part is narrowing down your summary / review into the most important part. So anything that you don't have trouble remembering, you could admit it from your outline. So anything that's really easy for you to recall, maybe you could just write like 1 or 2 words about it, like just the topic of what it is, or just leave it out wholeheartedly, and then maybe just look at it right before the exam. But you want to narrow it down to the hardest things to remember. So then you do that, handwrite it all. Because for me, it seems like when I handwrite something, I can remember where it was on the page, and kind of almost create like a timeline, and it's easier to kind of, it's almost like short-circuited in my brain so I can remember it. That works for me. But then once you have it narrowed down, you want to hand type it up, make it look really nice. And I think I could show you actually an example right here of one that I did. I don't know exactly what you could see. Let me see here. So this is kind of like what I do. So you kind of have in bold the different topics, make bullet points, make a few like diagrams, things like that. So that's what I like to do, and then make it shorter and shorter until eventually, because you might start with like 20 pages, 25 pages, and get it down to like 3 to 5 pages. And then again, you have your flashcards. And one key thing that works for me is diagrams and figures. So I like to hand draw them instead of just looking up pictures online, because first of all, you're doing repetition. And second of all, when you're color coding it, it's a lot easier to remember. So you're using a whole bunch of different senses, whole bunch of different neural pathways in order to remember this stuff. So I'll give you a few examples of stuff that I did when I was in college. This one is of glycolysis. So basically the breakdown of sugar. So you see it goes from here, the enzyme, the compound that you get, enzyme, compound, because I had to memorize every single intermediate and every single enzyme in order, all the way down through, and then you get to the Krebs cycle or citric acid cycle, and then the locations of each thing, where it happens, what happens, where NAD becomes NADH, all that good stuff. And then down here you get the electron transport chain and eventually your energy. So like that's stuff that I do. It takes a while to do, not really as long as you think, but it really helps you memorize things. Here's another one, similar idea again, and another one, and I guess with processes it really helps too. So this here is I believe this is like chromosomes. Yeah, this is what is this? Mitosis. Yeah. So I don't know, that's what works for me. And then you could write descriptions underneath each step. So you can see this is photosynthesis, I believe photosynthesis 2. Yeah, photosystem 2, part of photosynthesis. So you write descriptions under each. And then eventually you could narrow it down from, instead of this, maybe write it down to like 4 or 5 words, 4 or 5 words, 4 or 5 words, until eventually you memorize it. Arrows really help, all kinds of stuff. Again, it's additional work, but you can never be too prepared for an exam. And that study method, although it takes a long time, I probably study for my major courses like genetics or cell bio or micro. I probably put in like 30, 40 hours for an exam over the course of, 7 to 10 days. But definitely paid dividends because I got high 90s on all my exams. So definitely let me know what you guys think. I think I hit pretty much every major topic. Again, the bottom line, make an outline of the textbook. You don't have to, but I strongly recommend it because it's more information. Make one of the notes and lectures, and then condense them, type them, condense it, handwrite it, and highlight as you go key important points. Make sure that you just, at the end, you're gonna have the most complex and most difficult problems. Use figures and diagrams, and then work with your flashcards. And that's the most simple way to do it. Not the most simple way, but I feel like that's the most effective way, at least for me, because it's just repetition, 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 and eventually you memorize the information and you do really well on the exams. So let me know what you guys think. I know this one turned out to be way more lengthy than I thought. The take 2 was longer than take 1, unfortunately, but I'm done trying to record this video. So I will see you guys in the next video. Peace out.